Welcome to Manga's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 12. The Paladin of the Holy Kingdom. The carriage was shaking. This carriage was the property of the Sorcerer King, and in contrast to his plain appearance on the outside, its interior was classy, refined, and functional to boot. Neia was particularly grateful for the soft cushions that did not hurt her butt, no matter how long she sat on them. Neia peeped at the Sorcerer King, who was seated opposite her and gazing outside. He may be a fearsome undead king, but she did not feel the oppressive grandeur he had shown when he had met them in the audience chamber. This was probably because she had spent more time conversing with the Sorcerer King during their journey. During all this, one thing which Neia had learned was that the Sorcerer King was extremely magnanimous. It was true that the Sorcerer King acted with the dignity of a sovereign, his every action reflecting his quality as a monarch. However, when Neia sat in the carriage with him, he would act like an ordinary person from time to time. In addition, these occurrences had been getting more and more frequent recently. In all likelihood, the Sorcerer King had considered that Neia would be nervous while sharing the same carriage as him, and in his generosity, he had chosen to act more like a commoner. The reason why such incidents were occurring more and more was surely because his skills were improving. The reason why he did not act that way around the others was probably because they were still playing the role of paladins. To think he would treat another country's citizens this way, what a compassionate man he is. What was he looking at? Was he looking at the paladins riding alongside the carriage? Or perhaps something else, something that Neia did not see? Is there something interesting on my face? No, my apologies, Your Majesty. There's nothing on your face. It would seem she had been staring too intensely at the Sorcerer King. Puzzled, the Sorcerer King touched his face with those bony hands of his. I suppose it must be quite awkward to sit in a carriage and not say anything. Yes, in that case, let us speak. Although she had gotten slightly used to it, conversing with the Sorcerer King always made her stomach ache. We are not entirely familiar with each other, so previously I did not ask questions which might have intruded on your privacy, but we have shared the same carriage for several days now. I suppose we can be honest with each other now. Neia, can you tell me about yourself? About me? Even talking about herself was too vague a topic. She had no idea what she could say to please the Sorcerer King. Yes, indeed. For instance, why you wanted to become a squire. What sort of work a squire does. Could you tell me about that? If it pleases you, Your Majesty. After bowing her head, Neia began talking about what had been asked of her, but it was hardly an exciting topic. Talking about family and the work of a squire was not particularly interesting. Besides, I was told not to reveal anything to the Sorcerer King about matters within the country, but this much ought to do. Rather, if she had to cover up even those details, then there would really be nothing to talk about. Soon, the drab exposition with no structure ended, and the Sorcerer King nodded deeply. I see. So you're an archer, a rarity among squires, Miss Baraja. My skills aren't good enough for me to proudly call myself an archer, Your Majesty. I am simply better archery than swordsmanship, and the truth is that people have scolded me and told me I ought to focus more on training up my sword skills. To Neia, an archer was someone like her great father, and she was only a little more talented than a commoner. No, I should say that a paladin candidate who has an affinity for ranged weapons is quite a rare thing. If it were me, I would advise you to hone your bow skills. Since there are others better suited to swordplay, then you should let those people handle swordsmanship. Thank you very much. The Sorcerer King's words were sincere, and it made Neia feel that he was earnestly thinking, what an odd combination, she must be traveling a path towards a rare vocation. However, she had no idea what to make of what the Sorcerer King said next, and his mutterings bothered Neia. I feel embarrassed about dumping the work of minding me onto you. Nor is it just you, the same goes for the rest of you paladins. The best way to make use of your skills would be to station you outside. His gentle words made Neia stare at him. This was why talking to this king was so bad for her heart. Not only did he stand at the peak of his country, he was also an individual of overwhelming might. Yet he had not chosen to talk down to her from above, but he had lowered himself until he could see eye to eye with her before engaging her in a conversation. No. I can't let His Majesty spoil me like this. If I don't lower myself a little more. Neia pulled herself together. Everyone knows I have been designated as Your Majesty's follower, so please do not take it to heart. In addition, there is no job more important than accompanying Your Majesty. Really now? Still, I would like to offer you some form of recompense. In the past, the Sorcerer King had mentioned the topic of payment. She had declined, of course, but it would seem he was bringing up that topic again. Neia immediately began to think about how to reject his offer without causing offense, but the Sorcerer King was not finished yet. That said, it might not be good to receive a gift from the king of another country. So at the very least, allow me to verbally express my thanks. I believe I have inconvenienced you in many ways, and I hope I will continue to be in your care. And then, the Sorcerer King bowed to her. The king was actually bound to someone like herself, who was nothing more than a square. It was only natural for a king to carry the weight of his nation upon his shoulders. Slighting a king would be the same as slighting the entire country. The idea that a country lived through its king was a very common notion. In other words, the fact that a king was bowing was the same as a nation bowing. Of course, it was hardly unthinkable when a king did so to someone of high station. However, Neia was little more than a citizen of another country, and frankly speaking, there was no need for him to apologize to someone of Neia's stature. I can't believe it. His Majesty is wise and sagacious, and surely he must know the meaning of bowing. Even so, he still bowed to me like an ordinary person. No. Don't get full of yourself. I can't possibly be that valuable. This simply shows how magnanimous the Sorcerer King is. He even treats a commoner politely. Ah, he mustn't. Please do not do that, Your Majesty. Please raise your head. Yes. That was what she should have said before anything else. The Sorcerer King looked up, and Neia sighed quietly. Frankly speaking, if anyone else had seen what had happened just now, something terrible would have happened. Your Majesty. Neia took a knee within the cramped confines of the carriage's floor. Your servant is of humble origins, but I swear that until Your Majesty's work is complete, I will loyally and faithfully serve you. Since the king had given her his respect, it was only natural that she return it. Neia ignored the voice in her head which said that he was not the king of the Holy Kingdom, and bowed. No, no. Raise your head. Come now, could you take a seat and continue your previous topic? We haven't reached our destination yet, have we? No, not yet. She sat back onto the cushion and looked outside. Yesterday, we passed safely through the ruins of the wall by the grace of Your Majesty's power. We have chosen a route that will make us harder to discover, so it may take a little more time, but I believe we will arrive at our base tomorrow, or the day after. Although, said base was just a cave. Is that so? Even then, we still have some time, do we not? Tell me about the topic from just now. Also, I have not yet heard why you have your sights set on becoming a paladin. Given your talent for the bow, surely there must have been some other path you could have taken. Why aim to be a paladin? For the sake of justice? Or perhaps to be the pride of your nation? No. When she narrowed her eyes, what came to mind was her personal experiences. My mother was a paladin. She was a paladin who was skilled with the sword, completely unlike Neia. I see, so you heard something from your mother, or you admired her, Ah, no. My mother often said I shouldn't aim to be a paladin. And my mother couldn't do the work of being a mother, and while she could do the laundry and sew, she was completely inept at cooking and that sort of thing. She did everything sloppily, the roast meat was always undercooked, that sort of thing was common. Therefore, it was only natural that her father had been the one who cooked in their household. When she was young, she even thought that it was true for all families. Is that so? Well, she still didn't stop her daughter from becoming a paladin, so I guess she was still a good mother. Ah, no. When I told my mother I wanted to be a squire, she went and took out her sword and said, I'll let you if you can defeat me. And so on. The only reason why I was allowed to become one was because my dad desperately blocked for me. If I had fought her normally I could never have beaten her. That was the first time she had understood the meaning of killing intent. Ah, good, how shall I say this, it was a good family, Yes. Well, the neighbors often looked strangely at us, I thought it was a good family. Really? How nice, then, why become a paladin? Did you not think to follow your father's path? Was your father a house husband? No, my father was also a soldier who served his country. However, I never really thought of following in my father's footsteps. Why was that? Maybe it's because Dad gave me these eyes, so I sort of ended up resenting him for it. Neia pressed her index fingers to the corners of her eyes, and tugged them around in circles. When she was young, her friends often said, "Why are you staring at me? Are you angry with me?" And the like, and she had often complained to her father for it. After that, Neia had been beaten by her mother, who had overheard her saying so. Thinking of them was quite nostalgic, Neia thought. But perhaps after becoming a squire, I became more open-minded. At some point, I started to think that this was a gift from my father. Well, I could do without the fierce glare, though. How are your parents now? My father fought Jaldabaoth's army at the wall and died. I lost contact with my mom, and I don't know what happened with her, but I think she must have died during the defense of the city. After all, she was the sort who would have struggled to the bitter end. It seems I have inquired about a painful topic. The Sorcerer King bowed to her once more. Since this was the second time, the impact was not so great. However, it was enough to make Neia feel anxious. Please raise your head. How could you bow to someone like me? I thoughtlessly inquired about your dead kin. Although I was not aware of that beforehand, now that I know the facts, an apology is still in order. The Sorcerer King tilted his head after he raised it. No, that's not right. That's how it should be between equals. The king is not the equal of a citizen from another country. Moreover, we're the ones requesting his help. Well, such exceptions are everywhere. If someone sees your majesty bowing to me, they might look down on your majesty, because I'm just a square, after all. Yumu, I see, you do have a point. That's how kings are. These things are complicated, the Sorcerer King muttered. He must have meant that it was difficult to mix with people from other nations, even if he wanted to show his sincerity, probably. Yes. Well, this cannot begin to count as an apology. I shall lend this to you, Miss Baraja. The Sorcerer King swiftly reached into his robe and produced a bow.